Well, this is Steve Ridgel, and I was talking to my good friend Al at lunch the other day, and we were talking about a phenomenon that's going through our culture where people self identify. They may self identify their gender, they may self identify their ethnicity, but basically it's where you take something and you say, I am now, and you declare, you self identify what you believe to be, wish to be, want people to think you are, however that works. You may not look like what you claim, you may not act like what you claim, you may not think like what you claim, but it's kind of a phenomenon in our culture right now to self identify. So we're talking about that like we do a lot of things in our culture. And Al's a really good thinker, so Al says to me, I wonder how many Christians have that same issue. And I said, self identifying as a Christian? And he said that, and self identifying as something you don't look like, think like, or act like. And that really made me start thinking. So Al and I had a pretty good discussion about Christians who claim to be what you would never think they were on their own. And it's true for a lot of Christians. I see people, if you were to ask them, are they a Christian, they would say, yes, I am. But they don't act like Jesus. They don't talk like Jesus. They don't think like Jesus. We sometimes think, and I'm one of those guys who think saying something just doesn't automatically make it so. I can walk out my front door and say it's winter, and if it's 100 degrees, I don't think anybody's going to believe me that it's winter. Doesn't look like it, act like it. I can self-identify as anything, and that doesn't necessarily make it true. But it really hit home when I thought about how many people may fool themselves by trying to self-identify as a Christian. So, for those of us that claim to be a Christian, we better check and see if anybody that looked at us would ever believe that. How do we act? How do we think? How do we look? Do we behave like Jesus? The other thing, of course, that struck me is self-identifying doesn't necessarily make it so. It just doesn't. I think there are a lot of people that don't have faith in Jesus, don't try to behave like Jesus, never have gone through any kind of decision about Jesus. But when somebody asks, they'll say, yes, I'm a Christian. As a preacher, I do a lot of funerals. I do a lot of funerals for people that aren't necessarily, they don't have a church home, don't know a preacher. And so I'll go and they'll talk about all the things their loved one did, and they don't say anything about helping people or about living a life like Jesus would have lived, nothing that indicated they were a Christian. And then inevitably some loved one says something like this, but we really know they're in a better place. I don't know if they're self-identifying for their loved one, if their loved one tried to self-identify as a Christian, but it really doesn't work like that. Our claiming to be Christian does not make it so. The gift of Jesus, believing in Him, God identifies His people. Those that believe in Jesus, not us. So I'd be real careful in this world before you talk about other people self-identifying as something they clearly are not, until we're sure about us. You can't really just self-identify as a Christian and make it so. And if you do claim to be a Christian, put a little thought into what people see when they look at you. Would they ever believe that to be true? Or would they say, I never would have guessed that by looking at them? Well, this is Steve Ridgel, just thanking my friend Al for helping me to think through some things.